Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us at the very first outcome-based contracting technical webinar for the security industry with 376 registrants. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our moderator, Mr. Dex Yuan. Dex is a security professional with over 20 years of security experience in both public and private sectors. His career includes law enforcement work with the Singapore Police Force, regional security responsibilities with US MNCs, being part of the pioneer security team of Singapore's first integrated resort, and part of one of the largest critical infrastructures in Singapore. He is currently the director, principal trainer, and consultant at Security 4.0. He is also Assistant Regional Vice President of Region 13B with ACES International. Dex has also been providing outcome-based security contract training and consultancy services since 2019. Over to you, Dex.
Okay, can you hear me, Chloe?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you, Chloe. Yeah, I learned that there are more than 300 attendees this afternoon. It's definitely an amazing turnout on a Tuesday afternoon. So once again, I'd like to welcome every one of you to the outcome-based contracting technical webinar. In the next 90 minutes, we are going to learn more about outcome-based contracting, OBC in short. It's an initiative brought up by the Singapore government in 2018. It's been about 2 years since its implementation. It's time now we catch up on some of the progress of the OBC implementation and recap what OBC is all about. This afternoon, we've lined up 3 exciting presentations for you. First, you will be hearing from Mr. Andy Tan from the Singapore Police Force. Secondly, Mr. Steve Tan from Union of Security Employees. Thirdly, Mr. Alif Shah from Focus Security. This is going to be a very insightful session as you will hear the perspectives from the authority, the union, and the service provider. At the end of the 3 presentations, we will have a Q&A session. So remember to post your questions in the Q&A box. Keep your questions concise and remember to type your name and company at the end of the question. To kick off this afternoon's presentation, we have our keynote speaker, Mr. Andy Tan, Director of the Center for Protective Security of the Singapore Police Force. He oversees the work of the center, which comprises infrastructure protection regulation, capability development in the area of protective security, and security industry development, which includes outcome-based contracting. He is also currently the Commissioner of Infrastructure Protection and takes on the statutory responsibility of the Infrastructure Protection Act. Today, he will be sharing on the topic, modernizing of security contracts. Over to you, Andy.
Okay, thank you, Dex. Good afternoon, everybody. I presume you all can hear me well. I was actually just reflecting back that very fast, this is already November already. So time really passes in this particular year. I think for this year, all of us has been forced to change, whether you change in how you work, how you play, how we live our life. And all of us have to change very quickly this year. But actually in the security industry, we have been changing over the last few years as well. I mean, as we all know, the security situation has changed over the last few years. Terrorism is a concern. Well, for this year itself, I think COVID beat terrorism. But I think going forward, as we can see from France and things like that, terrorism never really went away. So in terms of Singapore context, what it means is that there will still be a great demand for security services going forward. Beyond that itself, I think from COVID, we noted that the security officers have to take on additional jobs, sometimes in terms of temperature taking, sometimes of visitor management. Even though we have all these additional jobs, we realize that the pool of security manpower isn't increasing. It's not easy to get people into the sector. Furthermore, considering that with the COVID situation, we have to kind of close the border with Malaysia, that makes things a little bit more difficult for us to get manpower into a security sector in Singapore. And in terms of the third change, all of you are aware of the progressive wage model. In this case, there will be another round of wage increase for the security officers in January 2021 itself. Besides this, there will be expiring of the overtime limit of 72 hours limit, which means that we need to deploy more security officers to do the job. If you compare all these changes, what it means is that demand will far outstrip supply. Okay, which means that we don't have enough security officers to meet all the demand out there, which over time, if you're just based on traditional manpower contract itself, your cost is just going to rise. But besides trend in the manpower side of the house, we also realize that technology has improved a lot over the past few years. In fact, a lot of the technology that we see previously in terms of CCTV, visitor logging, and things like that, has become mainstream. A lot of technology are now much more effective and much more affordable. And in a way, it is an increasing trend that a lot of such technology will be useful, will be much more affordable for the typical implementation at a site, typical implementation by a security agency. Besides that, I think the technology, we're also moving towards not just each technology in silo, but we have a greater integration of technology. We leverage on not just manpower as per previously, but we leverage on sensors, on CCTV. And we use that as a way to give us a total holistic situational picture, which is a much better situational picture than we had as compared to before. What this allows us to do then is allow us to do cluster patrolling, able to cover a much wider area than before. It allows us to not just react to events, but actually able to preempt incidents and prevent events. All this, if we use the technology properly, together with how we can redo our SOP, redo the jobs, allow us to be much more effective than before. Now, in our security sector, clearly, I mean, we work together with security officers, the security agency, and the service providers. I think there is now an opportunity for us to work together where we actually can relook at the combination of ops and tech and how this is applied to the ground. We have an opportunity now to find a better way of providing security solutions than before. Particularly with now technology being more affordable, and of course, manpower costs are rising at the moment. This allows us to fundamentally have a chance to relook at things. Particularly this year, COVID, it forces us to relook at many things from baseline. So the question is, why don't we take this opportunity to relook at how we actually engage services and buy security services itself? And that's where the gist of outcome-based contracting comes about. Traditionally, we have always buy security on a manpower headcount basis. What that actually means then is that, well, you just decide on the input required, how many men you require, how long they need to deploy and where. But there are a lot of assumptions here. The assumptions, number one, is that the service buyer are fully aware of your security needs. You are the technical expert, you know what are the risks that you're facing, the vulnerability you're facing. But the reality is that not every service buyer are actually fully security trained in a way. And besides, technology has always been advancing. So in fact, the technology has advanced very often that it's not easy for the normal service buyer to follow suit. So the point now is that, are we then able to give the opportunity for us to relook at how we actually do the contracting? And one of this way is really through outcome-based contracting, where we do security risk assessment. What this means is that upfront, you have a chance to relook fundamentally at what is your security requirement. Why are you doing security? What exactly are you protecting? Where are your vulnerabilities? Then how perhaps taking in view of the new technology, how you can perhaps provide measures in a more effective manner. Do you really then need that many security officers as per before? There's a chance and opportunity for you to rationalize the number of security officers that you have. So what we're looking for is that going forward, you should have opportunity to rethink what exactly are your requirements, the process to meet those requirements, and perhaps rethink whether by right, should I really need that many security officers in the first place? Sure, we know that technology sometimes requires some investment upfront. And it is necessary for the buyers to decide on, hey, I have to decide on the lowest cost because anyway, everybody wants value for money. Okay, but what we're proposing is that perhaps the idea is to look at cost from a longer contract term basis. Don't look at it from a 1 year basis, but on a 3 year, 5 year basis. If you look at it, you know that the manpower costs are going to go up year to year, and that's going to be cumulative. So would there be a possibility for you to think of it in terms of perhaps I invest some of the technology and to recoup that rising manpower costs by re-rationalizing the manpower that you require to do your security itself? And if you think of it in terms of a 3 year, 5 years, there's a good chance that you will be able to make back that difference. At the end of the day, what we see is that if you go back to the fundamental to decide on why you actually needed the security measures, why do you need to have the security guards in the first place? If we think about our objective, then we can actually decide on the optimal deployment of manpower and technology to give us the most effective security measure, yet at an affordable price that we are willing to live with. In short, what we're seeing is that instead of just deciding on starting with how many men you need, let's go back, take one step back and look at what exactly are your security outcomes. What exactly are you trying to protect? What goals are you looking for? Are you looking at making sure that there's no intrusion, there's no theft, there's no sabotage? Look at the outcome that you want. Give a chance for the service provider to provide you with possible options. Allow them to innovate to see whether perhaps technology mixture with a change in SOP, mixed with a change in the manpower itself can meet those requirements. As technology has evolved, has improved, there is a much better possibility for us to achieve a better outcome. And this actually gives us a chance to re-rationalize the manpower that's needed. You actually can possibly reduce the manpower. Example, maybe some of the entrances you can actually think, maybe I don't need those entrances anymore. Or perhaps they can be turned around and actually monitored by technology or biometrics or things like that. And that cuts down your manpower. Do you need the same number of manpower for patrolling? Perhaps there are different ways of doing it now with CCTV and things like that. So you may be able to reduce the manpower, considering the manpower costs are going to be going up. This also allows us to, of course, then redesign the jobs itself of the security officers who actually fit in with new SOP, new technology. And at the end of the day, we are not talking about worse off security outcome. We're looking about better security outcome in a way where we can leverage on new procedures, new technology, new way of doing things to achieve those security outcomes, yet at a suitable price. So what does the OBC involve? I think what it does, first part is, of course, outcome-based specification, which is what is the outcome that you want? What are the results that you want at the end of the day? I mean, part of it is to do the thinking. I think that's where it requires the buyers to think through what is actually most important to them. I mean, which part of what security outcome is actually the ones that you want to spend your money on and things like that. I mean, whether you can think through that or you need help from a consultant or you need help from us to help you articulate that, I mean, that's part of the process. I think beyond that itself, then the idea is to come up with KPIs to help you manage the performance. What we're not looking for is in terms of output. You know, if I man a person there standing in an entrance for 8 hours, that actually doesn't tell you anything. That's just the output. It doesn't tell you whether the person was sleeping, the person was detecting, the person was paying attention. The idea is that you want to be able to have a proper KPI to know the performance or whether you're achieving your outcomes. That's where it's part of the OBC to articulate that. As for the OBC as part of the contracting to be able to clear in terms of what's outcome-based and what's the performance indicators. And then, of course, when we look at the evaluation, we know that cost is always going to be a major component. But I think at the end of the day, we want to advocate at least a 50-50 evaluation on 50% on the quality of the proposal by the consultants, as well as 50% on costs, at least on that basis. I mean, think about it, right? All of us buy everything from insurance and things like that. Sure, we can go with the cheapest cost, but very often we go beyond that. We don't just look at the cheapest cost. We look at the claim condition, we look at the service, we look at the things like that. So there are other quality components that come besides cost. Same thing for security contracts. I mean, how well was the reputation of the service provider, how innovative they are, how able to solve your problems. So the quality of the solutioning is just as important as the cost component, because in the end, no point you pay the money and then you don't get the result you want. I mean, you want to pay the money at a suitable price, but yet you want a high quality security outcome. And actually, in the end, to make it suitable, the idea is to look at it from a longer term duration. What we're looking at, possibly 3, possibly 5-year contract. What that means is that first, any infrastructure investment will get amortized over a longer period. So both sides can actually make back the gains from your manpower savings or other savings over time. Second point is that it allows for a partnership to build up over a 3 to 5 year period. Because at the end of the day, both you, the service buyer, and the security providers both want to make sure that everything is safe and all the security requirements are met. It's actually the interest of both parties. I think nobody wants anything bad to happen. So it's actually in everybody's interest to establish a partnership and work over a longer period to make sure we understand each other and are able to solve the problems together. So in a way, if we do this properly, what it results in is that first, we can get smarter buyers who kind of know exactly why they should be spending money on security. What is it for? What are you actually protecting? What's the outcome that you want? Buyers who recognize that perhaps there may be possibility to integrate technology to have a better solution. Things that you couldn't do before, things that you couldn't monitor before, things that you couldn't preempt before. Now you can actually preempt the problem that you couldn't do previously. That allows us to then infuse more technology in the security process, reduce that reliance on the manpower. And in fact, the security officers themselves also have to up their game, because now they have to be able to know how to utilize all this technology to give you better service. As all government things, when we introduce outcome-based contracting, government always take the lead. This is, I mean, Singapore government always start first. So in this case, the government has asked to go OBC for basically all of its contract. I mean, this is actually in progress over the next few years up to 2023 itself. So what we have done is that a number of them, we're going to share a few examples of the government OBC experience. Firstly, the first one is MOE. MOE is a pretty big contract itself. It covers multiple zones, and like I say, each of zone is about 50 to 70 schools. The difference here is that MOE took a lot of time to come up with a performance assessment metrics. The idea is that they want to be able to work in partnership with the security agency to reward good performance. So if the security agency can meet the baseline security requirement, plus in a way show that they can meet further targets, there will be added bonus they're given. I mean, MOE does that. I mean, it takes more time for them to come up with performance metrics. But like I say, well, we have one successful solution. So the idea is to try to figure out how to actually extend this to other agencies as well. But it does shows that what we have done is that it has shown that it is possible for such a performance metrics to be put in place. It is possible for even government to adopt such a measure itself that works in partnership between the service buyer and the service provider to incentivize innovation, better way of doing things, and better way of meeting the targets itself. Okay. The other examples that we share is that of JTC. I think you're aware that JTC, One North, and things like that. It's a very wide premises, and they adopt a lot of cluster patrolling type of concept. But the key part is that a lot of these outcome-based contracts are pretty complex. Not necessarily all requirements may be factored in. So it's necessary for the service provider and the service buyer to work together in partnership. Like I said, at the end of the day, both parties want to make sure that it works. And in this case, JTC and their service provider partners have established an ongoing partnership where they are actually able to work across different levels for engagement and things like that, able to solve the problems with the proper risk assessment, the proper measures in place. And in the end, there has been substantial savings in terms of cost savings, in terms of manpower and things like that from this project. Okay. And lastly, for SGX itself, what we have shown is that in a way, they have done a risk assessment where they decided to reduce all the manpower costs and things like that, and they improved their productivity. And in a way, they have put in all the measures so that actually when the COVID hits and things like that, they actually have all the measures in place and all the technology in place to help them. So in a way, SGX actually transited to a COVID environment seamlessly, practically. Okay, I know time is running short. I'm actually overrunning quite a bit. So what happens is that I'm just going to go through a few, maybe perception, just to clarify them. Okay, firstly, the point is that people think that perhaps evolved technology, things will be more expensive. But if you think about it, if the costs are going to go up for security officers, which is a fact, over time it's going to be capped. And at the end of the day, you're going to need more headcount. So if you don't fundamentally look at it itself, it's just going to get more and more expensive if you just go pure headcount contract. So this is a chance that perhaps when you relook at it, there is an alternative for your service provider to provide you with a hybrid solution of technology and manpower that perhaps they'll be able to meet your costs and be able to meet your security objective. It may not be more expensive at the end of the day. Well, some people will be like, yeah, it's more complex and things like that. Yes, it is a bit more complex, but part of it is that we assume that nothing goes wrong, so it's fine, you know. But at the end of the day, if you think about it, we need to be clearer on why we are doing, clearer about security needs. And then if you make a risk assessment, it's an opportunity for you to rethink through and reassess how much security needs do you actually need, what's your security measures that you actually need. It's a fundamental chance for you to think through it. And in the end, that's actually better for you to be clearer what you want rather than just carry on with a traditional headcount contract. Well, what we have seen is that the cost itself is actually work out on both sides, because at the end of the day, if as a service buyer, you don't do anything, it's almost certain you're going to pay increased money for the same manpower. You can't run away from it, because the wages will go up. But if you have a chance to decide on working together with your service provider, there's a chance perhaps to actually rethink on the mixture of technology and manpower and actually relook at the costs. And that will actually result in savings for both parties. And lastly, like I say, what is very clear, the wages are go up as part of PWM measures. That's not going to change. Overtime exemption is not going to change. So in the end, the manpower costs are just going to go up. So unless we have to take a chance to modernize the security contract to rethink through, it's going to be hard to sustain the manpower contract costs over time. What we've been helping is that we're helping the security industries by training security consultants to do risk assessment. So these are the various workshops and avenues where we are training people to actually provide risk assessment and security consultancy. Besides that itself, CPS itself also runs clinic as well as engagement with the private service sector. I think the more important thing here is that there's a web link down there. Essentially, if anybody has any queries on OBC, you need to consult on OBC and things like that. I'm not going to go to the technicality in this short seminar, but then if you have any questions or technicality, you can reach out to us through that web link. So lastly, we all know that, in summary, the trends are clear, okay? Demand outstrips supply, manpower costs are going to go up. Technology has improved and make it more affordable. So the question is, why don't we take the opportunity to rethink of how we actually do security at a premises? Rethink of how you contract the security. There's an opportunity for us to make things more sustainable by incorporating how technology and manpower work best together with a change in the SOP, change in our procedures to allow us to achieve better security outcome at affordable prices. Okay, with that, I see that what we're proposing is OBC to go ahead. So if we invite questions later on, but like I say, if you want to contact us on details, please go to the web link and we'll be there to answer your query. With that, I hand over to Dex.
Thank you, Andy. It was a wonderful presentation. To the audience, do we have any questions for Andy? Please type it in the Q&A box. Remember to type it in the Q&A box, not the check box. In fact, I already saw a few questions. Thank you for typing in those questions. The speakers will address the questions during the Q&A session at the end of this segment. Our next speaker is Mr. Steve Tan, Executive Secretary of the Union of Security Employees. He's also the director for the Ong Teng Cheong Labor Leadership Institute. As Executive Secretary of USC, Steve was involved in the introduction of the progressive wage model in 2014 for security officers, which raised their basic wages from $800 to $1,250 today. USC was also actively involved in the creation and launch of the Industry Transformation Map for the sector in 2018, including leading one of the work groups at its launch. Today, Steve will share with us the results of the Security Officer Survey, which was a joint effort by USC and Singapore University of Social Sciences. Steve, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Dex. Good afternoon, everyone. It's very happy to be able to speak to everyone at this webinar. There are 238 people now, and well, it's a bit strange for webinars because you don't really have the rapport with the crowd. But please, at any point in time, I think there's no raise hand function here. You can log in a chat, or as Dex has said, the Q&A, and we'll get to the questions as soon as we can. I'll be speaking today on the wages and ground challenges our officers face, through a survey that we conducted together with SUSS. And also, I think towards the end of my slide, I'll talk about how we can alleviate the cost increases that is affecting the industry. And I think this is an important topic. Andy has covered the key parameters for outcome-based contract. But what OBC or outcome-based contracts mean to all of us, I think the mental models will take time to align. So hopefully all of us here today can share a little bit of our experiences from the industry. So at the end of my presentation, there will be links to this PowerPoint. So please, you can do a screen capture if you need the notes. Don't worry about taking down the key points here. Okay, so without further ado, let me just start on with the first part, which is this survey, which we have previously shared. So this is the key summary. I'll go into the breakdown later. More than 8 in 10 said they were satisfied with the profession. And SOs, I think there was a chat question earlier on, what is SO? SO is a security officer. So we refrain from calling them guards these days because I think times have passed. And today the security officers actually do more than just guarding. So SOs on the ground have good knowledge of technology and are willing to use these technologies at their workplaces. Wages are higher than PWM. I'll cover reasons later, but I think the key thing really is they still work very long hours with an average of more than 11 hours per day. And of course, in terms of welfare, actually 32% of them reported facing abuse at their workplaces. So who abuses them? I'll come to it. So this is the demographic of the people we surveyed. So it's an empirical survey, 707 respondents. So as you can see, there are more males than females in the industry. I think all of us would have already known anecdotally when you go around looking at the workforce. And of course, nationality-wise, we all know that the industry is only open to Singaporeans and Malaysians. Yeah. Okay, first off, in terms of the work prospect, as shared earlier, about 8 in 10 actually said that they were very satisfied with the profession. The actual survey is 40 over pages long, so I've actually extracted the key points here. Otherwise, I will run out of time. I have only 10 minutes. Yeah. So the next thing is that most security officers actually find enjoyment in their work. Okay, so this is opposed to popular belief. They say that guys are not motivated and so on. Actually, an empirical survey shows that most of them actually do find enjoyment in their work, and more than 6 in 10 reported no intention to leave their current jobs. So I remember sharing this the first time round, and there was someone in the audience who remarked, "Hey, that's actually higher than in my own industry." You know, I won't say which industry that is, but actually in the security industry, it's quite healthy. More than 6 in 10 actually don't want to leave their jobs. Yeah. Okay, so this is the slide that was most gratifying for me. Firstly, most security officers use technology at their workplaces. And most importantly is that most officers, high proportion of them, are very comfortable to use technology. And especially officers in their 50s and older, they are broadly comfortable to use technology and are already using it. I say this gratifying because many of us actually have the perception that, oh, Singaporeans above 50 years old don't know how to use technology and so on. But actually our officers have been using them for their work purposes, yeah? And the technologies they use, CCTV, very common, right? So this is not installing CCTV, obviously. It's monitoring it and using the smart diagnostics that come with the CCTV these days. Visitor management system, I think Alif will speak a lot about it later. And you can see some of the solutions that have actually been applied to some condos in Singapore. That saves manpower and is a smart use of technology. So the rest are there. If you have questions what these are, please feel free. You can ask and I'll be happy to share more. Okay, so the first part was about what the officers do and tell the demographics, what's their expectation of technology and so on. This part a little bit more on the salary portion. I think the important point is that first, there's a severe shortage of manpower in the industry. The industry only allows Singaporeans and Malaysians, as I mentioned earlier. So although PWM now is 1250, actually a lot of the officers, a lot of officers are actually paid higher than that, largely because there is a shortage. Industry estimate, I think, is for 10 to 15,000 shortage of manpowers, and that is why the officers are actually working long hours. Yeah. So what this means basically is, if you cannot remember anything I said, most important is that there's not enough security officers, and that means that if the demand is always more than supply, the wages will continue to trend upwards. So I gave you emphasis there with bold, and also I highlighted it with underline. So it is important to note, because just this morning I went to meet a security agency and her buyer, and I think the concern was that this is a COVID period, and how come the wages keep trending up? So largely because one, there's not enough officers, and two, PWM will be increased because we want to lower the working hours of the officers. Yeah. So I'll touch on that in the next slide, but this one is just to show a comparison that although the wages is 1420 median, but you look at the comparison, it is still fairly low. And most importantly is that they work 11 hours approximately each day, regardless of age. So this will change from 1st January 2021. And this was what I was referring to just now, right? So security industry, unlike many of the industries that we work in, overtime exemption, this is an application through the Ministry of Manpower to ask to be exempted from overtime law, right? This OTE is applied to the entire industry, right? Unlike other companies or other industries where, say, the company has a specific purpose for that month, they can apply for a particular OTE for June or July, that period of time. But in our industry, it was previously quite prevalent. Every of the 250 security agencies would have applied overtime exemption simply because there was not enough manpower. So this will change from 1st January next year. And what that means is that the security industry will have to follow, like the rest of us in Singapore under the Employment Act, maximum of 72 hours OT per month, right? So This will mean that the hidden third shift, as I like to call it, right? Today, 2 shifts of workers, they pull in the 24-hour clock. In other industries, it's an 8-hour shift. So there are usually 3 shifts or even 4 shifts for shift work. But in the security industry, it's 2 shifts. So 2 shifts of worker actually pull in a hidden third shift. So this will actually not be able to sustain next year. And what it means is that the hidden third shift will now become a reality. You have to hire more officers if you continue to want to use man guarding alone to guard your sites, right? So that is not tenable. And if you look at the PWI increases next year, it's 1,250 now. Next year is 1,004. Basically, the increment in the basic salary is to also compensate for this reduction of the OT hours, so that the gross salary for the workers remains the same as this year. Yeah. Okay, so this part is important for us to note, especially for service buyers, because our officers actually get abused, and this was done pre-COVID. Okay, I think we are now doing the second round of this survey, and it'll be very interesting to see whether this abuse has actually increased, because the officers now have to screen people, don't allow them to enter the shopping mall, for example, and there have been anecdotal reports of officers beaten up for trying to enforce the safe distancing or wearing of masks, right? So it's even sadder for the second point, that we notice the older the officers are, the higher chance they get abused at the workplace. Okay, so it is a mixture of verbal abuse, most common, physical and verbal, and physical abuse. So basically, it is quite high prevalence, right? 32% have actually gotten abused before. And regardless of demographics, the abuse from the general public is the highest, right? Where people are told they can't do this, they can't do that, the general public, followed by residents and then contractors. So as buyers, I think it's useful to take note of this. And the union has actually gone around to explain to buyers and put up notices together with SAS and AXA to inform the public not to abuse our officers, especially since they are just performing duties prescribed to them by law under the Private Security Industry Act. But advocacy efforts have to continue because the abuse is still there. And another form of abuse, in another form of the word, is that they are asked to perform non-security duties. So these include what you see on the screen: cleaning, housekeeping, carrying stuff, sweeping the floor. And these are duties that are not prescribed under the Private Security Industry Act, right? And it is not right to ask for a lot of manpower so that you can have them help you do housekeeping, sweep the floor, check certain things, pick up the pets when they poop on the floor, you know, things like that. I think that is not what we want our officers to be doing. So this is a recap of the survey findings. I won't go through them again. It's the same slide as before. But what you should take away, therefore, is that one, salary will continue to increase even without PWM. By virtue of them being not enough manpower, wages will continue to go up. And do we foresee that there will be enough manpower one day? The answer is no. The whole Singapore actually has a diminishing, if you look at our number of babies per year, we actually don't have enough babies. And what that means is that every industry is competing for manpower. So what is for sure, manpower alone not enough. What is important, therefore, is to find alternatives. So the USE, our union, actually has put in place a CTC framework. CTC stands for Company Training Committee. So in the old days, if you are of my vintage, you'll remember that we had productivity councils or productivity committees in each company. And that was to work with the companies to help innovate productivity with kind of strategies to help the company save costs, become more productive. So in today's context, we call it CTC, Company Training Committee. And what we want to do is to actually encourage buyers to look beyond just employing the security officer to do one form of work. So outcome-based contracting basically means that first you need to conduct a security assessment, implement the right technology before deploying the officers to do what the technology cannot do, right? And we call that Assess Technology Manpower, ATM, right? So what that means is that after you install a technology, by and large, actually you do not need an officer, a warm body there anymore, because the technology can do most of the job. And the technology actually is alert 24/7 as long as there's a power supply. So the officer, therefore, sits on top of this technology to do something else. And that something else is what this company training committee is about. We can actually train them in different types of skills to leverage the technology to actually make sure that the property is safe as far as possible. So there are 3 levels of this. A basically is the most generic level where the officers are trained in very, very basic skills of digital, for example, what to look out for cybersecurity, and facility management basics, right? So at least when they see problems, they know how to communicate with the building engineers using the right terms. That actually helps in speedy resolution of problems. It saves water escaping from a tap overnight, for example. The second is where we customize the training that is required, what the buyer needs, what the agency is able to offer, and then we customize training such that the officers are leveraged up so that they can also use these systems that are put in place. So some of it are building services and safety related. Then CERT, fire safety, this is quite commonly asked for. And today we can actually train our officers to do that. C is where we actually go through fully customized remapping of what the site requires. So basically what it means is that the security consultant comes. So Andy's team has actually curated a group of consultants who can now actually advise clients what you need to do in terms of installing technology and what kind of manpower will be needed to leverage the technology. So with that map in mind, we can actually provide a customized place and train program to let the officers on site be retrained so that they can master the new systems that are installed. Right. So basically these programs, as is quite commonplace in Singapore, there is government funding, NTUC has some funding, and our union has also thrown in some to help our unionized agencies and union members to cope with the training. Right. So as I promised earlier, these are the links to the slides. And if you have any questions at all, please feel free to ask. The main thing I want to leave with everybody's mind is that using full manpower in today's context, in today's Singapore, is way too expensive, and it is usually not the best way to have good security outcomes. The machines, like I said, can actually replace the manpower to do duties that are repeated, that are not how should I say, it will not put anybody to sleep. Yeah. So I think the important thing is that we should leverage technology to make sure that the security outcomes are achieved and use manpower smartly to make use of the machine to keep the security outcomes there. Right. With that, thank you very much, and return the stage back to Dex. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve, and very well said. You shared a very interesting, insightful, informative survey findings. I'm sure the audience have got many questions, burning questions for you also. So audience, please keep your questions flowing in by typing into the Q&A box. And last but not least, our final speaker today is Mr. Alif Shah, Business Development Executive of Integrated Security Solutions from Focus Security. Focus Security is a licensed security agency by SPF. Due to rising manpower costs, Focus Security has worked closely with its group of companies to integrate manpower, technology, and processes to deliver a hybrid security solution. To mitigate the rising cost of security services, Alif has been working closely with USC to achieve the industry transformation map. Today, he will be sharing his expertise on the hybrid security for condominiums. Over to you, Alif.
Yeah, very good afternoon to all of you. Thank you, Dex, for the introduction. Okay, so as you mentioned, my name is Alif from Focus Security, and today I'll be sharing with you how Focus Security has actually transited from being a 100% manpower reliant security company to one that integrates manpower, technology, and processes into our service contracts. This is not only to deliver an enhanced security solution for many condominiums in Singapore, but we are also able to reduce costs for our clients. So without further ado, I will start my presentation by sharing with you my agendas for today. Okay, so these are my agendas for today. Firstly, I'll be sharing with you what is actually hybrid security and how Focus Security has been doing it. Okay. Secondly, I'll move on to why do we actually need this hybrid security? Why not just continue being 100% manpower reliant? Okay. Thirdly, I will cover the different kind of technologies which over the span of 5 years, Focus Security has actually been deploying. Okay, and lastly, very interesting is that we want to share for one condominium exactly how did we put in technology to reduce manpower. Okay, so firstly, what is hybrid security and how does it work? Okay, so for traditional guarding, many condominiums or MCST actually calls for tender and request for a specific number of manpower according to its current contract. So what this means is that, for example, if they're already having 4 day shift officers and 4 night shift officers, they will let you know that these are their headcount requirement. So for focus hybrid security, what we actually do is that when the MCST calls for tender, we will conduct a site survey or rather a risk assessment to identify the lapses of the property, and then thereafter we will provide a quotation and a proposal to give our quotation and proposal for hybrid security. Okay, so you can see in our contract what we do is day shift, we still indicate what manpower they need, okay, but with a reduced number. So for example, if they need 8, we tell them that we can do it with 6 or even 7, okay, and the kind of technologies which you will put. Okay, so why do we need hybrid security? I believe everyone has actually been covering the cost factor. So I will cover something else which from a security company perspective, why do we need technology? Okay, so progressive wage model, I believe many of you are already aware. Okay, so this is just our internal calculation for cost for security. Okay, so you can see that over the years, security officer for one headcount might even be 5,000. This is based on our prediction on how much we will have to quote clients moving forward. Okay, so you can see definitely cost is rising. Okay, and besides the cost factor, why do we actually need hybrid security? I believe Steve from the union has already informed everyone about the manpower shortage. So in the security industry, there's actually 30% manpower shortage in the security industry. So 5 years back, before Focus Security actually started investing in technology, we realized that many a times we actually hire officers regardless of quality to fill up the gaps. Because for example, I have a site which needs 5 manpower today. All I want to make sure is I deploy 5 men so that I do not get an LD from the client. So that's when we realized that, hey, this is not actually viable. You know, based on this, there are many officers who come, okay, and basically they will create a lot of problems for our clients and also for us. So that's when we started doing this hybrid security. So how does hybrid security solve this problem? With hybrid security, Focus is actually able to increase our profit margin while reducing number of manpower required. So thus, we are enabled to offer a better pay package to our officers, and better pay package plus mundane duties replaced by technology. We believe it equals to better quality of security staff, which over the years, we have seen an improved quality of our own staff. This is because many of them know that when you join Focus, you don't have to do very mundane duties. You don't have to write down car numbers. You don't have to do a lot of things. Your job is more towards, it plays a very important role for the security officers. And also, besides this, we have this manpower inconsistency. Okay, so there is a very high turnover rate in the security industry. Okay, so inconsistent execution of bylaws and SOP. Previously, what we realized is that, for example, today this officer resigns, right? The next day we bring in a new officer. They might at times not adhere by the bylaws and SOP. So even if it's the same person, for example, today is Monday, I'm feeling a bit better, I will just do 100% check. But the next day, let's say I'm feeling tired, right? I will actually lessen on the check. So this is what we didn't want to, and it caused a lot of problems by our client. So how does our hybrid security actually solve this problem is that with hybrid security, processes and SOP must be adhered to, as it has been made compulsory to do. So when we deploy a technology, we sit down with our client, we ask them, what is the SOP? What are the bylaws of your estate? So when they give us a list of their bylaws and SOP, we will work to putting it into our technology. So now the officers actually do not have a choice. They have to execute 1, 2, 3, 4 before allowing the particular visitor to come into the estate. Okay, so with SOP and bylaws nailed down by clients, plus technology ensuring SOP and bylaws are carried out, equals to consistency of security service. So we don't have this issue whereby today this guard do this, tomorrow the guard do that. We have seen a really drastic decrease of this issue. Okay, so just to share our group of companies, okay, we have JetTech, which is a recruitment company, Focus Security, which is a security company, and lastly, AsiaTech, which is a IT company. So what JetTech always provides the manpower, whereby Focus Security, we specialize in security processes, so we provide the processes, and AsiaTech will provide the technology. So with our joint efforts, when the progressive wage model actually kicked in place, okay, we spoke internally and we decided the way to move forward is hybrid security. That's why we came together and we work as a company to actually deliver this hybrid security. Okay, so this is just some of our technology which we have deployed over the years. Okay, firstly is the remote gate guard, our Q+ resident mobile app, visitor management system, license plate recognition system, remote managed services, and also video surveillance. I will tap into it a bit more later on. Okay, so this is one of our projects, H2O residences in Sengkang. Okay, so I will share with you how it was before Focus and how we have actually transformed the security with technology. Okay, so previously, before we actually took over the project, there were 4-day shift and 4-night shift officers, totaling of 8 officers, okay, for the whole contract. So after we took over, we actually reduced it to 6 head count. So we reduced 2 officers and we put in our technology. Okay, so how our technology come in place is that before Focus, there was always an officer, okay, stationed outside the guardhouse. So after Focus Security took over, we deployed our remote gate guard outside the guardhouse, okay, which is, this is our remote gate guard. And what is remote gate guard? So remote visitor is actually a remote visitor management system managed by our 24/7 HQ command center. So this system actually acts as a security officer. So whenever a vehicle comes in, okay, it will trigger our ops center. And over the years, we have also automated it, whereby you can just fill in your details and it will be connected to the resident. Okay, so it's augmented with automatic license plate recognition cameras and also fully integrated with the car park gantry system. So the database actually contains all the registered resident contact numbers and vehicle numbers. Okay, this is just some of the functions of the remote gate guard. Firstly is remote visitor management system, whitelist and blacklist vehicles. This is very interesting because previously we actually, based on a man guarding contract, we had one condo which has about 140 blacklisted vehicles. So every time our security officers want to let people into the estate, they will have to check the list one by one to make sure that this vehicle is not blacklisted. But when we install our remote gate guard with the license plate cameras, the cameras actually will trigger if this is a blacklist vehicle, or if it's a whitelist vehicle, it will just open up the barriers. And also it allows AI facial recognition. Okay, based on our data, 5 to 8 p.m. in condominiums, many residents and tenants actually come back by Grab or taxi, unregistered vehicles. So rather than what we had to do with man guarding is that we have to check for their access card, or we have to make sure that they are residents. So with our remote gate guard, actually, whenever this resident come back, he or she can just look at the system and the barriers will actually open. And all this time in, all these data are actually kept in our backend system, which I will show you later on. And residents can actually pre-invite their visitors. Okay, previously we had this very big issue whereby sometimes in condos there are about 50 so-called, there's a barbecue and there's about 50 people invited. So with this, our resident mobile app, the resident can pre-invite. When the visitor arrives on site, they will understand that this is a pre-invited visitor. So it actually cuts down on the workload. And you can see this is just our automatic license plate recognition cameras deployed in H2 residences. Okay, this is just our tag featured in Straits Times. Okay, and lastly, this is actually the side gate. Previously, we have one officer manning the side gate every time. But after we took over, this is we installed our motion cameras and also our facial recognition intercom system. I'll just show you a very short video on how it works.
Motion detect.
Okay, so you can see whenever previously our guards had to make sure that there's nobody who is a non-resident coming into the gate, okay, by the gate. So what we did is we installed a facial recognition intercom system, which is able to, instead of just using the access card, they still have the option to use the access card, but they can also just scan their face and the gate will open. So whenever people come in, there will actually be a trigger in our guardhouse and also our 24/7 op center, like you can hear motion detect. So this is to make sure that, because whenever you put cameras, security officers, they are attending to a lot of things. So they might not realize that actually there's somebody coming in. So that is why we put in this prompt, so that they are definitely going to look at the CCTV, as in who is coming in. So if they detect any so-called tailgating or anything, then they can send an officer down to check on it. Yes, so this is our Q Plus resident mobile app, which is developed by our sister company, AsiaTech. Okay, so this is just some of the features. Scan and go entry. So when they come back by the Grab, if they are uncomfortable to use the facial recognition, they can actually use our mobile app to scan the QR code on the system itself to open the barriers. Okay, so instead of needing to go down to the management office, they can also register their vehicles through our resident mobile app. Okay, they can view the unique visitor logs, they can pre-invite visitors and also upload their facial recognition. So many systems in the market require the resident to personally come down to the system to register the facial, but from AsiaTech's backend system, they are able to integrate it with our Q Plus resident mobile app, so that whenever a resident uploads their photo, the management office of the estate will actually receive this request and they will approve or they will reject this request. Yeah, so you can see this is just an example of how they can open the gate. Okay, so if they do not want to scan their access card, they can also scan our QR code using our mobile app. Okay, this is our facial recognition access control intercom. Okay, the functions are pretty straightforward. Facial recognition, QR code access whereby they can scan to enter. It's integrated with our Q Plus, door access control, direct call to the resident, and also temperature screening. So if there is a visitor, they can actually just call the resident and the resident can press 1 to open the gate. And lastly, this is actually our QVMS visitor management system. Okay, so whenever there is a need to do manual entry, our officers on site can use our VMS system, but all these data will still be stored in one place. So in the event there is a need to investigate any incident, all the data are stored in one place. Okay, QR code check-in, Q Plus integration, self-registration. Violation logging is something very interesting. For security officers, they conduct car park patrol probably 2 times, 3 times per day. So with our visitor management system, whenever they go for patrol, they don't have to bring with them the resident file. What they can do is they can bring the mobile tablet, okay, and if there is any violators, they can log it in the mobile tablet. So the next time this person comes into the estate, they can actually, it will be triggered that this person previously maybe parked illegally, or did not exit by the stipulated time. And this allows the officers and also the command center to take preventive measures. And our system actually works online or offline. Okay, this is just our backend system. Okay, so in the guardhouse, they can actually see this. Okay, whereby today there's how many visitors, how many vehicles, how many pre-invited visitors are there, how many violations. So with this, actually, in many condominiums by 2359, the visitors will need to exit the estate or apply for night parking. But you can see from our backend system, okay, they do not have to go for petrol. They can just look at the system. There are about 763 vehicles. So by the end of the day, they must make sure that this 763 becomes zero. So that is a confirmation that all the visitors has actually left. Okay, and residents, whenever they want to apply for night parking, what they currently do is very messy. So they will have either to come down back to the guardhouse or they have to call the guardhouse. So what we enable them to do for mobile app is that they can apply for night parking through our app, and the management office will actually be able to approve it. Okay, if it's after office hours, for it depends on the bylaws, but for this particular estate is automatically approved. Okay, so up to a maximum of 3 times per month. Yeah, so this is what we can see from our security guardhouse. Okay, so in summary, overview is that what we provide is our remote gate guard, our Q Plus mobile app, visitor management system, license plate recognition system, remote management, and also video surveillance. Okay, so what we always tell our clients is that why choose Focus Security is because we are providing an enhanced security. We are not just providing manpower, we are providing a one-stop security solution. And we actually have some arrangement with the MCST that the technology will belong to the MCST. Okay, we have a proven track record of security service and also technology. So with Focus, they can definitely see an immediate cost saving. They do not require to actually pay for the system upfront. Okay, it does not require any of their sinking fund. Okay, and there is a possible reduction in the residents' monthly maintenance fee. Yeah, so before I end, for any security buyers who would like to reach out to us, you can send us an email. Okay, for security agencies, you can contact our tech company, which is Asia Tech Singapore. You can drop them an email or you can even call them up. Yes, so I hand over back to you, Dad.
Thank you. Thank you, Ali, for sharing your experience on OBC and your company's business model. Definitely a good reference for the other security agencies. And with that, we conclude the presentation segment, and we shall now proceed to the Q&A session. Let's invite all our speakers back to the virtual stage. So audience, please continue to type in your questions in the Q&A box. I will be looking at the Q&A box, and for our panelists, so let's go through by the order of the questions that comes in. The first on the list we have from Li Xiu. Li Xiu actually made a comments, both of comments, I think a comments and a questions. Li Xiu said, service buyer need to do thinking. Absolutely, I think you need to do a lot of thinking when preparing the OBC. So the question asked is, the OBC, I think it means OBC need to be cast against the IPA's requirements. IPA will refer to Infrastructure Protection Act. So are there any succinct guidelines or the what must? So probably this question, Andy can help with it.
Thanks, Dex. I think first, the IPA Infrastructure Protection Act does not apply to all facilities. It particularly applies to special growth facilities, mostly critical infrastructures, as well as iconic buildings or high-profile development. So for these buildings itself, generally, they go through a much more detailed security risk assessment. We actually do a security by design with them itself. And then by the security by design, they actually will then have a comprehensive mapping out in terms of the security plans and the technology and security measures to put in place. So in a way, each of them are actually customized to that particularly high-profile development or critical infrastructure per se. So in a way, it doesn't apply to all property. But at the end of the day, what we're looking for is that we're thinking that people should be clearer on their outcomes that they want to achieve. What exactly are they concerned about? And I think that's where, if they need to talk to a security consultant or talk to us or things like that, we can help them to actually articulate their thinking better. Over to you, Dex.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Hopefully we move on to the next question. This question is asking about challenges faced by the government agencies such as MOE perhaps can elaborate more on the difficulties and challenges. I think our audience want to know the problems and challenges faced by the, I think, buyers. Probably very quickly, I think you mentioned about MOE, right, Andy? Probably you can just share quickly with us what are some of the challenges.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Dax. I think the first part, of course, the first part is actually trying to do the thinking and articulate what exactly are their security requirements. I think that goes into the tender, for the OPC tender. I think beyond that itself, the other part is really then when it comes to deciding on the KPI and then monitoring the KPIs over time. I think in MOE's context, because they just have 6 zones and really 50 to 70 schools per zone, that's actually not easy to actually manage the KPIs for such a wide coverage itself. And the other part, of course, for them is to decide on the budgeting, because they have to give an incentive. They have a performance framework, they've got an incentive. But I think the overall feedback that we have from MOE right now is that they seem to be working well. They have a system to actually figure out how to manage the KPIs. But that's something that I think we have to work with each of the agency in context of how they actually do it in their particular context itself, how they manage KPIs in their context.
Thanks, Andy.
Yep.
Okay, another question from Melvin. Temperature taking is also not the core duty of security officers as well. I think this question probably will relate to what Steve has mentioned. One out of 4, that's not right, if I remember correctly, 1 out of 4 are doing non-security duties. So now people during this COVID-19, people are doing temperature taking. So probably we can hear from Steve.
Yep. Dex, what's the specific question you want to ask me?
He's talking about temperature taking is not the core duty of security officers. So what is your view?
Well, actually, we had discussed this together with the, I think the PRRD side. So this is definitely access control, right? Because when you are standing there and checking whether this person has a fever, if he has, he cannot enter the premises and you have to do what you can to actually prevent him from entering. That is actually access control. But COVID is a scenario that is really not the same as normal situations. It is a pandemic. So during this period of time where the officers, there are not enough officers to do access control, temperature taking in particular, actually what we have seen so far is there has been other manpower sources reinforced to do so, so long as there is still a security officer somewhere around the vicinity. So you can use machines to actually screen the temperature and then tell the person that he cannot enter. But or you can use an alternative manpower, but there must be a security officer somewhere nearby in case there are issues that actually arise from there.
So it means it's okay to do this job, right?
It is actually the main thing is that strictly speaking, this is the security officer's job, right? The temperature taking and preventing people from entering the premises is the security officer's jobs. And the main thing is we have to look at what was the deployment pattern before this new assignment is required. So if previously the whole assessment has been done and was assessed that this site, for example, needs 3 days and 3 nights, and then now we've added duties, we still assume that it's 3 days, 3 nights. Sometimes it can be unreasonable. So without specifics, I think generally we can say that that would be the application of the concept. So if the manpower is already fully occupied with all the necessary duties and we are adding on additional duties, then I think it would be reasonable to say, 1, yes, it is the security officer's job, but 2, do we have enough manpower? If not, I think we need to apply excess manpower for this.
Okay, thank you, Steve. I think another related question, this is from Patrick. He's talking about, again, non-security related function. Seems to be a trend where buyers often incorporate into OBC. Now we are talking about the OBC tender. So Patrick gave an example of checking for fire extinguisher expiry, check for discarded wheelchairs, check for expired items in the first aid box. How could the buyers be best educated to the genuine objectives and intent of OBC? So I think Alif has done a OBC with condominium, and I'm sure he has experienced some of these non-security related requirements. Probably we can hear from Alif, your take on this.
Okay, so for the non-security related functions, what we actually advise the client is that whenever we go for a tender interview and upon the client selecting us, what we will do is we will list down we will let them list down what are the functions they want, what are the job scopes. So from there, we will sit down with our operations and also with our assessor to determine if this is doable. So if it's not doable, let's say it's not a security function, we actually advise the client that this is not a security function. Okay, we might not have the proper professionalism on this matter. So normally when the clients they hear that, we have already done our due diligence, we have informed them that this is not our set of specialization. So that is how focus security actually engage in this kind of questions, because to be honest, there are a lot of funny requests. Okay, I've seen so many. Okay, so but we have, at the end of the day, as a security agency, we have to stand our ground and inform the clients that this is not part of the duty, and this will actually take up, because we are reducing the manpower. Okay, we cannot just add unrelated functions to the security officers' workload.
Thanks, Ali, for your views. I think I must also direct this question to our authority, Andy, for his views on security officers taking on non-security roles. Andy.
Okay, thank you, Dex. Okay, I think that at the end of the day, again, while the buyers can actually try to spec that into the contract itself, I think it's really for a security agency to be clear that what are the security roles and what are they willing to offer. The security providers will cost it in. At the end of the day, if there are going to be additional roles, they will see whether can they accede to the additional roles, and they'll factor that in their price. So it's actually very important for buyers to actually figure out what exactly is critical of their needs. Because actually looking at it, the security is actually going to be, the wages are going to keep increasing. So if you're going to factor in things that are non-core, they're going to factor it in going to be overall your costs factor. So I think it's a matter of trying to work with the buyers and understand to them perhaps what are the ones that are core to the security work, and what perhaps may or may not be core, and then they can decide other avenues to solve the same problem, to meet the same requirements.
Thank you, Andy.
Dex, is it okay if I just add a couple of points?
Sure.
Yeah, okay. So on this point about what is a core security officer's duty and what is not, actually by the strictest application, the Private Security Industry Act, as I mentioned earlier, actually specifies that the security officer actually has 5 roles: patrolling or guarding, surveillance, acting as bodyguard or bouncer, screening, right, as well as regulating traffic under the Road Traffic Act. So if you go strictly by the book, these are the 5 functions that you need security officers for. And any other functions that actually we talk about just now in my slides, actually it's not a security officer's duty, right? But I take a step back and I say that a few years ago when we actually visited Sweden, right? The tripartite panel visited Sweden to look at how security is procured there. Actually, the key thing is that there are different ways for us to look at it. The union's view is that one, of course, we have security with deep, strict vertical security skills, and that includes going further into security, whether it's investigating stuff, forensics, for example, or things that are related to security as security consultancy. The other way is to look at it as a horizontal skill expansion. I think in Andy's slide just now, you mentioned JTC Southwest. There was a project where JTC actually worked with the security provider to look at whether the security officers could be enhanced with horizontal skills, such that there is no need to employ 2 sets of crew. So instead of having a security officer and a facility management crew, you could now actually pay for a group of officers who are cross-trained. Most importantly is that the officers must be rightly remunerated to do that, right? So training was provided. The buyer, JTC, actually ensured that the officers were able to do the job that is required. That includes fixing simple fixes, electrical and plumbing, basic facility skills. And with that, the officers actually get higher pay. I think for me, as a union, our view is that that is actually the trend to go in future as well. So a security officer talks and then sees, oh, there is a leakage. He can actually rectify the problem with the buyer's blessings. Ends up, everybody wins in this case. So that's another view that I'd like to offer to the audience. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Steve. That's a very affirmative kind of a statement. I think that will encourage more innovative ideas. Hopefully, we don't abuse the officer. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Let's move on to the next question. This is from Teo Cheng Ping. Despite the support from the government, agencies, and union, can I find out what is the drive towards facilities owners? So this one talking about buyers to support this digitalization and transformation. How will we encourage end users to appreciate? I think to appreciate and to adopt them. Maybe any incentives to encourage them to come on board?
Dex, I think I'll take that question first. Okay, so generally, I mean, of course, we've been building awareness for the various facilities owners, but there's also grants by IMDA, such as Advanced Digital Solutions Grant, as well as the Productivity Solution Grants for ESG itself. I mean, it may not apply to all contexts, but these are some of the grants itself where we're looking for trying to support digitization, trying to support innovation in terms of work processes and things like that. So there are some grants out there. I think, but those are specific to those agencies. So perhaps those are interested can actually find out from the agencies itself. Yeah.
Thank you. Any views from Steve regarding incentives from union side?
I think the main thing is that from union side, we have actually been talking about best sourcing initiative, inclusive growth program, and outcome-based contracting over many, many years. I still remember in 2006, I was involved in this buyer seminar where we actually tried to explain to people that if you continue to just use manpower, you're not maximizing the outcomes that you can possibly get. So I think it's been 14 years. We are still at it. And I think it is not going to be a day that we have to stop talking about outcome-based contracting. And this is the reason, one of the reasons why we are doing this technical webinar, because we really want to encourage all our buyers to embrace the new ways of doing, especially security outsourcing, because you can outsource the work, but the responsibility cannot be outsourced. At the end of the day, I think Dex is actually very, very well versed in outcome-based contracting as well. I've attended one of the courses that Dex conducted. And I think the main thing really is buyers have different expectations of outcomes. There's no one way to really think about outcome-based contracting. The main thing is to take that first positive step forward and try it. Don't just say that previously it was a 5-day, 5-night. I still buy 5-day, 5-night. I don't know why, because that's the only way I know how to follow. It was 5-day, 5-night. And despite the price increasing more than 50%, and we just continue 5-day, 5-night because that's the only way we know how to do it. I think that would not be the way to go in the future.
Okay, thank you, Steve, for that. And thank you also for the free marketing for me. Okay, so let's, I hope we can still cover a few more questions. Yep, I think I saw one question from Benedict Cole. Not sure whether this is the guy I know from FSMAS. He asked a question regarding health. Let's see if we can answer that. I agree that SO should be paid better to attract more qualified personnel to join the security industry. We want to check whether SO undergo health screening before joining the industries. It's quite common to see SO that look unfit for the job. Who would like to take this question? Maybe Alif, since you are deploying so many security officers on the ground.
Okay, next. So for this particular question, for the health screening, actually, what we as a company, what we actually do is that it's not foolproof, but I think it's a preventive measure. Whenever our security officers actually apply for a job, okay, we will definitely get them to come to our headquarters. Okay, and in the headquarters, actually, we have a set of recruitment team. who will determine whether this person is, I mean, of course, he has a license, okay, but based on his physical, certain attributes, if there is a need, they will actually ask for a medical certificate by a doctor, certified fit to work. So as of now, this is the only best thing we could do. Okay, so I believe it might not be foolproof, but it acts as a preventive measure.
Thank you, Ali. Does Andy or Steve want to add on?
Yeah, I'll just add on a couple of points. Actually, I think Andy might be the right authority to answer this. But basically, as Alif has mentioned, actually many of our security agencies do the health assessment before they onboard one employee, especially for officers who are above 60 years old. I think it is important and it's mandatory for them to actually go through some form of health screening. The union on our part has also been working with HPB for the past 5-6 years to actually encourage officers to adopt a healthy lifestyle and also to provide them with free health checks, basic parameters, right? So I think the observation is correct that there are officers who are quite, especially quite senior in age, and health-wise, there may be some concerns. And I think it is important for us, therefore, to look at using what they have in experience and not asking them to do just physical assertions. For example, clocking. In today's context, actually, there are technologies that don't require people to do clocking just to ensure any checks anymore, right? So you can use technology situated at the right places. So I think yesterday's newspaper has covered how the PUB used to go around using these very long stethoscopes to listen to pipe leakages, right? So today they actually use technology to inspect the pipes on its own and alert wherever there is a leak. So there are technologies that are available now. There's no need for a person to actually walk around to clock every spot anymore. So really be open-minded about it. Yeah.
Okay, so Andy, you want to add on?
Maybe just add on, I think from the authorities' perspective, we're looking at somebody with the skills to do the job. I think at the end of the day, there are a variety of roles that the security officers play. And it's really up to the agencies to decide how they match those officers to the roles. I think then it's leave it to the security agency to decide on what's the health requirements or the fitness requirements that's necessary to meet those roles. In the end, the security agency does have a contract to fulfill. So they have to decide what's the profile of the security officer that meets their needs. So in a way, the authorities will let the security, kind of let the industry manage that part itself while making sure that they do meet the minimum skills requirement.
Okay, thank you, Andy. I think we are running short of time. Probably we just go for one last question. So this question we'll take, okay, for Ali. Okay. Do you face any challenge to introduce technology to MCST? Okay. So far, any grant possible for MCST? Yeah.
Actually, to address this question, that's whether there is problems to introduce technology. I find that at first, about 5 years ago, when manpower cost was still budget friendly, okay, many condominiums actually come back to us and say that, why do we need technology? Just give me men. I ask for men, you give me men. But after through progressive wage model, okay, implemented by MOM and also USC, I believe that everyone has actually seen manpower costs rising. And through the COVID situation, I believe many security companies have done their part, okay, and actually increased the quotation for the client, okay, because of the shortage of manpower. So this is when I feel that condominiums in Singapore are starting to be more open. Okay, do you have any, rather than we introducing it, they are starting to call us, okay, because they see our Straits Times article and maybe through word of mouth from our client that we have indeed a working technology solution. Okay, that's when people actually start calling Focus Security and ask us whether do you have technology to reduce my manpower? Can you come down for a discussion? Yeah, so right now I believe that many condominiums are starting to open up. Yeah, starting to open up.
Okay, so thank you, Alif. I think we have come to the end of the Q&A session. Probably we just have, invite each of the speakers to give us a concluding statement. Probably start with Andy. Do you have any concluding remarks?
I think my point is, I think the probably same as all the other speakers. I mean, the trends are there. I mean, in the sense that the wages are still going to go up. And it's going to go up with the foreseeable future, primarily because supply and demand doesn't match. But technology is there. Technology has improved. They're much better. They're much more affordable and things like that. The idea is, instead of doing the old way of always just relying on manpower, why don't we take a chance to allow for technology to come forth? Perhaps that's a better solution, a better way of doing things. I mean, if we take the current COVID situation, all of us are forced to adopt a better way of doing things. So this is a chance, an opportunity to think of and take that opportunity, take that leap to try a new way of doing things, which will make it much more sustainable in the future.
Thank you, Andy.
Yep.
And Steve?
Thanks, Dex. I will close with one of the questions in the chat, where actually it's mentioned that whilst the economy is like not doing well, PWM is going the opposite direction, right? So I just want to end off by saying that the PWM in our sector was introduced because there was market failure in the industry. If we look back far enough, back about 10, 20 years ago, wages were already at $1,000 basic at least. But over time, it actually gone down because there's market failure, because it was outsourced and people bid for manpower as if they were bidding for goods, you know. So the cheapest product, I'll buy it. So this is wrong. And I think we have recently had a lot of conversations about PWM and minimum wages and so on. And I think the key thing we want to assert is that officers actually don't do simple jobs, you know. They are heavily regulated. There are a lot of requirements. PWM actually spells out what skills they need, what kind of productivity is expected, and then they can actually have a career pathway with the commensurate wages. This is important to bear, and it is important for us to bear in mind, and for our buyers especially. I think the question shouldn't be whether PWM should be there or not. It is already there, and we do it because we owe it to our officers to give them better wages, better life. So what should we do to help make the job more productive? And technology usually points the way there. And I hope that our buyers can at least start talking to some of those who have actually implemented these solutions, and then see whether it actually works for us. Yeah, that's all I have. Thanks, Dex.
Thank you, Steve. And over to you, Alif.
Okay, Jack. So I just want to end off my statement by thanking everyone to take their time to attend this. Yeah, I also have some of our clients inside. Thank you very much for listening to us speaking. Okay, and I have two sets of closure. So firstly, for the security agencies in Singapore, I just want to share this tagline. Okay, when we learn how to work together versus against each other, things might start getting better. So what this means is that many security companies see each other as competitors, but let's all sit down and start developing technologies, start implementing technologies so that the industry can get better. Because as one, we can do so much, but if as focus, we only can do so much. But if all the security companies actually step up and start implementing technologies, the industry will get a whole lot better. And for the security buyers, I hope that, I mean, not only for focus, be open to all the security companies. When you call for tender, stop being manpower reliant. Because this manpower, I believe through this ceremony, you guys have heard that from the experts themselves, from the police, from union, that manpower cost is rising. So give security agencies a chance to introduce their technologies. They do not just shine them away. So that's all I have to say. I hope all the security agencies and the security buyers have learned something from me and our fellow panelists today.
Okay, thank you, Alif. And once again, thank you to all our three speakers. Big round of applause to you guys. Okay, so before we conclude our webinar today, let us now welcome Mr. Chia Wai Hong, the Project Director from Conference and Exhibition Management Services Private Limited, who will give us an introduction to Safety and Security Asia 2021. Over to you, Chia.
Thank you, Dex, and thank you to all our distinguished speakers for their earlier presentation on the topic of outcome-based contracting. I'm Chia Wai Hong, Project Director in SAMS, organizer of the webinar, and am here to make a brief introduction of one of our long-running trade show called Safety and Security Asia 2021, SSA 2021. The show was first held in 1991 and is a well-established and proven platform for product suppliers, technology vendors, and solutions and service providers to gain access to business opportunities, as well as to further learn the trends in the security industry in Singapore, as well as the region, especially in this new normal. SSA 2021, the 19th event in the series, will be held at the SANS Expo and Convention Center, Marina Bay Sands, Singapore, on 30th of March to 1st of April 2021. SSA 2021 is organized as part of ABS, Architecture and Building Services 2021, a conglomerate of 6 synergistic trade shows catering to the whole built environment value chain. These trade shows are organized as an initiative under BCA's Build SG, a national movement that encapsulates the spirit of collaboration in the transformation of the built environment sector. SSA 21 is co-located with 3 other trade shows closely related to safety and security industry, namely Fire and Disaster Asia, Singapore, WorkSafe Asia, and IFAME, an International Facility Management Expo. At SSA 2021, we offer exhibiting companies 6 unique propositions. Firstly, we offer a ready captive local and regional audience of some 3,000 security, fire safety and protection, civil defense and workplace safety professionals from the related concurrent conferences. Secondly, we offer an additional 8,000 walk-in built environment professionals from across the 6 synergistic trade shows. Thirdly, we offer all companies in the security industry the opportunity to participate in the prestigious Malayan Awards, a recognition for innovative and cutting-edge solutions, technologies, and products for the security industry. Fourthly, we assure attendance of key buyers group through CPD, PDU, and SDU accredited conferences organized by or jointly with relevant trade associations and professional bodies. Fifth, at SSA 2021, exhibitors are given opportunities to use the business matchmaking program to make advance appointments with pre-registered visitors and conference delegates. And lastly, SSA 2021 exhibitors are able to enjoy the hospitality package of lunch and or complimentary parking and free flow of coffee, tea, and drinks over 3 days. This package is included in the participation fee. Next, on this slide, we would like to point out the various highlights during SSA 2021. This would consist of, first of all, at least 5 concurrent conferences, seminars, and workshops for the security, fire, and safety industries, all to be held on the show floor. In addition, there will be national groups from China, Korea, Portugal, Singapore, and Taiwan, with the Singapore Pavilion being organized by SSAS, Security Systems Association of Singapore. For this Singapore Pavilion, eligible Singapore companies are able to enjoy financial support of 50 to 70% of their participation costs. Besides the national groups, special products pavilions covering the tech sectors that include smart FM technology and robotics, UAV, and automation will be organized. A pavilion for Malayan Awards winners would also be organized. Other highlights would include the Malayan Awards as indicated earlier. On this slide, we would like to highlight the 10 to 12 concurrent conferences being lined up with SSA 2021. Security, fire and safety, as well as facility management related conferences are highlighted in blue here. Some key conferences being planned include the Security Industry Forum, which take a more in-depth look on OBC with case studies, Fire Safety Managers Briefing, and the IFMC, International Facility Management Conference 2021. On the next slide is the floor plan showing the layout of this whole event. On the plan, we have highlighted the various national pavilions like China, Korea, Portugal, Singapore, and Taiwan, as well as the 2 special products pavilion. Also on the floor plan, you can see the locations of the 3 conference rooms within the exhibition halls, where almost all the concurrent conferences will be held. Next, we would like to point out the main partners involved in SSA 2021, and this would include USE, Union of Security Employees, our strategic partner for the Security Conference, and SSAS, Security Systems Association of Singapore, our strategic partner for the official Singapore Pavilion. Our other partners would include Frost & Sullivan, who is our strategic knowledge partner, and Singapore Industrial Automation Association, our official technology partner. To participate in SSA 2021, we offer various options. Companies can participate either as just as an exhibitor, or in addition also as sponsor. 2 exhibiting and 5 sponsoring options are available. More details may be requested from us. Finally, thank you for attending the SSA 2021 presentation as well as the OBC technical webinar. For more information on SSA 2021, please call or WhatsApp me at 65 9689 0152 or email to chia@cems.com.sg. See you at SSA 2021. That is all for this presentation today. Thank you again for your attendance and have a very good evening.
Thank you, Chia. Chia, I think your handphone will be very hot after this. Ladies and gentlemen, we have now come to the end of the outcome-based contracting technical webinar organized by SAMS, and we hope that you have gained much insight into outcome-based contracting. OBC is a journey, not a destination. I encourage every one of you to embark on this journey. Please also continue your learning journey with SAMS. To that end, you are invited to the upcoming physical security webinar on 11th of December at 4 p.m. The event is hosted by SAMS, co-organized with Security System Association of Singapore and with Frost & Sullivan as the knowledge partner. Please register for the event when you receive the EDM from the organizer. And finally, on behalf of the organizer, I would like to express our appreciation to all the speakers, Andy, Steve, and Alif. Thank you so much. And of course, not forgetting all of you guys, the audience, for your attendance and participations. Have a good evening. See you soon.
All right, thank you.